Welcome to Cellopedia. This is Maxim. Today we will work on a beautiful Adagio from Sonata in E minor by Benedetto Marcello. For many students, this amazing music is source of endless frustration. It might feel quite overwhelming to deal with so many instances of dotted rhythm, mordents, trills, and shifts. In this lesson, I will guide you through this music, one measure at a time. And as a result, I hope you will fall in love with this music. The same way I feel now after I have learned this piece many years ago with my teacher. Right at the beginning, you have to figure out how to play the combination of dotted 16th note and 32nd note. This little extra line makes the second note a 32nd note. And you shouldn't be afraid to play those fast notes. 32nd notes supposed to be very fast, right? But the tempo of this piece is Adagio. And Adagio is very slow tempo. This is why in many slow pieces of music, composers use a lot of 16th notes, 32nd notes, and sometimes even 64th notes. Each beat in a slower tempo is so long, so when composer wants to write faster notes, he or she can only use 32nd notes or even faster notes. I'm sure you feel quite confident playing dotted 8th note and 16th note. Well, dotted 16th note and 32nd note works the same way. Let's play it with the metronome, and we will set it to 60, but we will be measuring each 16th note. You see that dotted 16th note is 1.5 of the beat, and dotted 8th note is 3 beats. And again, we set each beat to 16th note. Now, after you play this spot several times, you can make it faster, but the ratio between notes will stay the same. For instance, let's now try the 16th note 80. It worked the same way, but of course you had to play faster. And now, after you tried it several times with the speed 16th note 80, you can switch to counting by 8th notes. If we keep the same tempo, we will need to set the 8th note to 40. There are 2 16th notes in every 8th note. This way, to make sure that we play in the same tempo, we divide 80 to 2 and we will get 40, which will be our 8th note. At the end of this lesson, I will play it through in tempo 8th note 40. But for now, I will continue in this tempo and I will be stopping every time I feel you might need some help. that squiggly line above D sharp? It's a mordent. And a mordent is an ornament, indicating that a note has to be played with a single rapid alternation with the note above. In this case, the note above is E. The main note is D sharp. To find the note you have to use for the mordent, you think this way. The next letter up from D is E. And there is no E flat or E sharp in this measure. That means that you will have to use E natural. And one turn you will have to start with the D sharp, then play E, and then quickly come back to D sharp. One more thing, this quick turn you will have to make right at the beginning of the beat. You'll have to stress the first D sharp. Let's now continue. After D sharp, you will have to make a shift to B with the fourth finger. Make sure that you use the eighth note rest to make this shift. And you will continue with the up bow. I will start with this mordent and play few more notes for you. At the end of measure 3, you will have to play two A's, both of them up bow. And first will have to be on the open A string, and the second one you will have to play with the fourth finger on D string. Needless to say that those A's have to match in terms of the pitch. They have to sound exactly the same way. And it's quite difficult. If you slightly miss the shift with the fourth finger, everyone will be able to hear that you missed the note. I stopped the bow after the open A, and while playing open A, I moved my left hand to have enough time for this shift. In the measure 5, make sure that you stop the bow after that is 16th note, the same way you did right at the beginning. In measure 5, we have 4 groups of dotted notes. Each group of dotted 16th note and 32nd note has to sound identical in terms of rhythm. It might be a very useful idea to try to subdivide to 32nd notes. It will work this way. You have to think something along this line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And you will be playing each 32nd note when you count 4. Let's talk about trill. This symbol you see above A in measure 7. A trill is another musical ornament consisting of rapid alternation between two adjacent notes. Sometimes those notes half a step apart, sometimes a step. Remember how you figured out which notes you have to use to play a mordent? The same logic applies here. In trill, you play the note you see, which is an A in this case, and the next note up is B. And we don't have any flats or sharps for B for this measure. That means you will have to use B natural, which is one step above from A. There are few different ways how to play those changing notes. Very often in Baroque music, the style of music of Benedetto Marcello, it's quite common to start the trill with the top note. That's what I'm doing here. I'm starting the trill not with A, but with B. However, some people might choose to start with A, especially considering that the note right before that is B. If you have a teacher, that person might suggest you to play in a particular way. But for this piece, I like to start this trill with the higher note, with B. Dotted eighth note in Adagio is fairly long note. We usually don't play the trill the full length of the longer note. It's quite common to stop trilling, changing all those notes a little bit before the end of the note. In this case, I suggest to play trill for the eighth note and the last part of the dotted eighth note, which is 16th note, I play without trill. You remember that the dotted eighth note is a sum of eighth note and 16th note. So this way I'm playing the trill as an eighth note, and the last part of this dotted eighth note I play without trill. Here we have a harmonic. You see, two fingers are written there, 3 and 0. Some students think that 0 means you have to play open string. But of course, we don't have this open string. We have D, but it's one octave lower. Here you have to play higher D. So the only way to play it with 0 is to use harmonic. And we will find it on the D string. The suggestion is to use the third finger. This is why you have number 3 above. And remember, when we use harmonics, we just gently touch a string. You don't press it all the way, so the string is in a good contact with the fingerboard. Just gentle touch will make this special harmonic sound. Here we have another mordent, and And you remember, in a mordent you play the note you see, which is F sharp, and the next note up, which is G. You make just one turn and you place this turn right at the beginning of the beat. Here we have several groups of 4/16 notes. Make sure that you think about bow distribution, that you don't spend too much bow for the first few notes. If that happens, it might sound like this. You see, I got pretty decent sound for the first three notes, but I had very little bow left for the last note, and sound quality went down. You don't want to sound like this. This way, make sure that you save the bow when you play first few notes of this bow, and then happily spend the rest playing last few notes. In the measure 11, you have a tricky shift to make when you have to move to A with the fourth finger. I would suggest to make a tiny stop right before that. We have slur of two notes followed by another slur. And if you somewhat shorten the second note of this slur, you will have more time to make a shift. And I believe that's also good for the style of this piece. This way, the second note will be somewhat lighter. And this is good for Baroque music. Another trill we have to play here. You see the note E, and the second note will be the next letter, F, right? But in this piece, we have F sharp everywhere. That means that you will use F sharp with E, and the distance between those two notes is the whole step. And you will be using 2 for E and 4 for F sharp. I started this trill again with the top note and 2 30-second notes after the trill. Make sure you count. Those 2 tiny notes will use the space of 16th note. Remember, 30-second note plus 30-second note equal a 16th note. And make sure that you count. You can count by 16th notes here. And you place those 30-second notes right on spot, right where the 4th 16th note would come. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have 2 F sharps up bow. You have to stop the bow and make a shift. That will definitely need some practicing. And then after that, you have another trill. This time you will use F sharp and the next note up, which is G. Shortly after that, you will have to play 2/8 notes up bow. And for the second note, you will have to make a shift to the second finger. And yet another trill. In this case, it's G and A. Those couple of measures are probably trickiest in the whole piece. Just make sure that you play each trill separately, then you practice a shift after that, paying attention to bowings, and then you will be able to put it all together. The sign above the A in measure 13 is fermata. That means that you have to play this note longer than a quarter note in this instance. The rule is it's about half longer, so that might be like a dotted quarter note, but there is not very clear definition. It depends on the artist. Sometimes you can make fermata even longer or keep it on the shorter side. A few words about vibrato. Many musicians consider that using vibrato in music of this style is not good taste. And I agree that we have to be very careful. This is music of 18th century. When you play something written by composers of romantic style, 19th century, or composers of 20th century, then you usually want to use more vibrato. For music like Marcello or Bach or Mozart, you would use less vibrato. But I would encourage you to try to play some notes with vibrato. First of all, that's a point. You learn to play new music and you also learning to use vibrato. And on top of that, questions of style, those questions you will be addressing a little bit later in your career as a cellist. So at this point, I would suggest you to play, and when you quite confident with the notes, with the rhythm, use some vibrato. And now it is time for us to play this movement through. As I promised, I will keep the same tempo, the 8th note 40. If it helps, you can set a metronome to 80 and measure every 16th note. Or, of course, if it's too fast for you at this moment, use the slow metronome tempo and work on this piece measure after measure.